This next set of messages was part of a larger file that had 7,621 media files. The detective writes, first I searched the messages and looked for messages between Haley and Redacted and found the following. A total of 163 messages were found in Redacted's messages starting from December of 2024 to July of 2025. These messages were a combination of text, silent snap, and audio. There were messages that were indicated were deleted. I reviewed all of the media, and the following were of evidentiary value. One of them is from Haley that says, I'm going to actually be late to work one day and everyone is going to be like, where's Mrs. Beck? Or where's Miss Beck? She's sleeping in. No, it'll be because I unalived myself because of you. So watch yourself. And then she says, you come to our game and I'll excuse you from absent work. And then there's another message where she says, kind of funny. I have you literally rolling on my fucking kitchen floors. I don't want to hear it. And then another message where she says, you're going to say, quote, I'll give you 2 check marks, end quote. Shut up. You're going to say Redacted has a personality and a big butt. Can I at least have those? And then in another thread, Redacted says, I'll watch a movie with you or some shit. Don't sound too enthused. And then again, in a different set of messages that happened 2 months later, says, this is why I don't have you on Snap. Access that you should not have. Haley says, oh, Snap is where you draw the line on access. You have access to me in literally every other way. STFU. And you sent me this. And then Redacted sends unknown media and says, cause you whack and lame. Haley sends unknown media and says, what am I supposed to do about this right now? If I don't provide later, then you can call me lame. He says, deal. And that is the end of the messages with Haley. Next, I checked for messages with Angela, and I was not able to locate any. The next profile I searched for was with Redacted. There were a few messages, but did not have evidentiary value to this case. While looking through messages with other users, I found messages that referenced Redacted's teachers. One profile was with Redacted. There were a total of so many messages, and here are the ones of evidentiary value. Okay, here's the problem. These are between 2 students, and both of their names are redacted. So based on these messages, it appears that this is between the student and his girlfriend. So I'm going to refer to them as student and girlfriend. Girlfriend says, where are you? Student says, tutoring. You make me so mad. She says, your tutor? Who is your tutor? He says, Miss Beck teaches world history. I'm in U.S. history at the moment and I needed help with the take-home test. She says, okay, weird. He says, okay. She says, you've been there for hours the past few days. He says, indeed. She says, you're that behind in world history? And then he says, dinner was made yesterday and I picked up cookies the first day. No, U.S. history, I already took world history. She says, is it just me or why are you texting me when you are getting help? He says, because I'm not actively doing TS, this shit. He says, she is. The girl says, I don't know. And then Redacted, I think she's saying his name. She says, that's weird to me. Stop fucking your teacher. And then it says, after reviewing the messages with Redacted, I discovered messages with user Redacted. This user was later identified as Redacted. And then here are the messages of evidentiary value. The girlfriend says, so I'm confused. What are you saying? Mind you, during all this shit, even after our first kiss, you were texting and snapping girls you've had sex with and hanging out with and flirting with our 25-year-old teacher, let's not forget. And then he says, trying to go back and forth. She says, no, I'm not. These messages are so bad and so vulgar. I'm going to save it for its own video. I'll be back in a second.